The movie begins in 1960 when George and his family are moving into a terrible new home without electricity and with insufficient food to keep them full. However, their mother advised them to give thanks to God, but George didn't think his mother was telling the truth. While sleeping, George's mother tells George that he should not hit anyone at school on his first day because George is a nervous person. George shows up at school the following day, and everyone notices him because of how he looks. When we tried to respond to the teacher's question, she wouldn't let him. At lunchtime, George was sitting alone and had no food and the rest were eating. One of the students make a joke on George which makes George angry and beats him. When the teacher came, he ran away. Years later, we see him and his friend watching the bar where the drunk man came out. They followed him and tried to rob him, but to their surprise, the person is a policeman. On his way home, George noticed a place where food and drink were provided for free. However, at this establishment, a person's talent is found and developed, and in exchange, they hire them. George goes back to his mother and tells her what he saw. The following day, the guard gives him the official institution uniform and explains the rules of the facility. When he enters the room, he notices the new shoes his mother bought him. When it is time for lunch, he is surprised that his shoes have disappeared as his shoes have been stolen. In the dining hall, he saw the thief wearing his shoes. He is chasing him while he is angry, but the thief enters the room and closes the door, but he breaks the door and attacks him. Doc takes George with him in his car and he had his file with him and he knew that he had previously got into 3 fights. Doc gives him the money for the ticket but George begs him a lot and tells him that this institution is all he has left. Doc is the coach. George agrees and enters the gym. Fights one of them but he fails. Everyone was mocking him but Doc continued to instruct him, but George got angry and came out and hit a punching bag and knocked him down, making everyone surprised by his strength. Doc trains George at the gym and gives him a cheer. George confronts the person he met earlier, hits him and knocks him to the ground. Doc was impressed with George's performance. George goes to Doc and tells him that he wants to get into matches, but Doc tells him that he is still a beginner boxer. A year later we see George participating in the tournament and fighting a strong Russian boxer. His family was watching him on TV and they were very proud of him. The fight begins and everyone is cheering for George. After several strikes from George on his opponent, he easily wins the gold medal. He was happy and raised the American flag. His family was in disbelief at what they saw as their brother had won his first gold medal at the age of 19. The next day, he was wearing his gold medal and meeting his friends. They told him why he raised the American flag despite their killing of black people. But he was angry and went back to his mother, who calmed him down. He tells her that he is going to participate in a tournament. He goes to meet the attractive girl at the airport who catches his eye. She is named Paula, and he manages to get her phone number. Doc takes George to professionals to train him. He introduces George to Sadler and Coach Moore. George watches Sonny, who wears a black belt, and trains with them. He starts training. George calls Paula. They got to know each other and love each other. George participates in a few matches to earn his spot in the tournament. He managed to win all of them with ease, rose to fame, and ultimately chose to marry Paola. Finally, George became heavyweight title contender and he will fight the champ for the title, the one who defeated Muhammad Ali 2 years ago, and he was expected to beat George easily. Everyone was chanting the opponent's name. The fight begins between the two parties. He receives an unexpected blow from his opponent, but he also hits him, and then punches him, knocking him down. Everyone was shocked by George's strength. The second round begins. George is in control and delivers multiple punches, then he hit him and knocked him to the ground. Indeed, George deservedly won the championship. Doc was very happy. Watches the news that boxer Muhammad Ali is mocking George. He told the announcer that he would face George one day and defeat him. George takes his family to the big house and they celebrate his success. He didn't care about his wife. His sister Mary tells him that she is pregnant. Problems happen between him and his wife because of the fans, and she was upset about it. After that, George travels to participate in a big match to fight Muhammad Ali. George noticed Muhammad Ali mocking him in front of everyone. But George remained silent. Everyone thought that George would beat Muhammad Ali. The match begins with George controlling the match. But then he loses focus, because of his ego and arrogance. Doc was angry because George was fighting unfocused. George punching randomly. In the end, Muhammad Ali was victorious and beat George. Everyone was so shocked. The strategy employed by Ali in the rumble in the jungle was a key factor in the fight's outcome. Ali, adopting a tactic he called the rope-a-dope, leaned against the ropes and absorbed Foreman's powerful punches while conserving his own energy. As the fight progressed, Foreman exerted himself, but Ali weathered the storm and began to capitalize on Foreman's fatigue. In the 8th round, Ali seized the moment and unleashed a series of precise punches, ultimately knocking Foreman down. The rumble in the jungle not only showcased Ali's tactical brilliance and resilience but also solidified his status as one of the greatest boxers of all time. The fight remains an iconic event in the history of sports. George spoke to his family, but his wife told him that she wanted a divorce. After that, he meets his mother. Go ask God why he kicked out. He tells her that he was the reason for his loss and he holds God responsible for his failure. One day, he decided to fight 5 boxers in order to prove to everyone that he is strong. Muhammad Ali was among those present. As usual, he mocks George, who asked him to rematch between them, but Ali tells him that he don't want it. Message reaches George and he rushes to the hospital. His sister, Mary, is about to give a birth, but her baby is in danger and may die. His mother asks them to pray to God. George goes out and prays a lot and he has apologized to God. He told God that if someone had to die, he should die instead of his sister's son. After a few moments, we see Mary with her son and they are in good health. The doctors couldn't believe how the baby lived. George told her that he knew he had called upon God and that God had answered him. After days pass, he was fighting his opponent but he was out of focus. Everyone was talking that George, since his loss from Muhammad Ali, was no longer the same. Indeed, he lost the match. Doc didn't know how to deal with him. He was very angry and asked them not to talk. Suddenly, George passed out. He was about to die, but he survived. Doc told him they thought he was dead. George feels faith and touched by God. George goes to church and talks about what happened to him. He told them that people should believe in the existence of God. He decided to retire from boxing and dedicate his life to serving God in the church, and to become a priest. When he came out of the church and told Doc he was retiring, Doc couldn't believe it and tried to convince him to return to boxing, but he was adamant about his decision. Then George goes to Muhammad Ali and they start a new page and become friends. After that, he goes to his wife and apologizes to her. She accepts his apology but refuses to return to him. In the church, he saw a girl and fell in love with her. He takes the microphone and stands outside, gives advice to people. After that, he goes to meet Jenny and talks to her. Then he takes her to an old church that was close. He decided to reopen the church again. 7 years later he became a pastor in the church and gave advice to people. A mother asks him to teach her son boxing but he refuses. Then we see him with his wife Jenny and their children witnessed in the news, the child whose mother brought him to teach him boxing. He was accused of robbery and shooting. He regretted not agreeing to train the kid, which made him take hours and go to an old gym. Fought them with reopen the gym. His wife bit nervous and something seemed wrong. Many renovated needed, spent a lot of money. The gym make young people come and they train. Suddenly the electricity goes out and it turns out that they don't pay the bills. George got to the bank and find out that the balance in the bank is empty. If he does not pay the bill then the gym will be closed. All of Tibbs raised because his friend, Irish betrayed him and gambled with the money. George go to Iris, but he just leave him. He decided to do an advertising job in order to get the money for the gym but his wife said they received not even half the needed. No choice but to go back to do boxing again although his wife against the idea. But George convinced his wife. George go to Doc and tell him that he wants to come back to boxing. Doc said it will be difficult because of his weight and anger but George adamant. Then Doc asked George to lose weight so he can train him. George train every day continuously and finally can reach ideal weight. George go to Doc again to train. He get into the fight and win. The media talking about it and it is give attention to television program. Then comes Golden Bell Championship. He lost but everyone was cheering for him. George went to the bank where he was able to get money from the advertisement and matches he participated and was able to pay off the debts. Then George entered into another fight with another champion. His opponent was young but with his experience George can defeat him. Everyone was impressed by what George did. He became the boxing champion at 45.